Hey everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn. On this show, I'm really excited to welcome with me longtime KIX guitarist Brian Forsythe. Brian was really cool sitting down and talking with me for nearly an hour and a half, and I want to say thanks, Brian, for taking the time and chat. I had a lot of fun. Brian will explore lots of topics, including performing with Kip Winger on the Monsters of Rock cruise, touring with RATT and Whitesnake. Why did David Lee Roth's team cut the power on KIX one night during a concert, and how did KIX react? We'll talk about recording the legendary Blow My Fuse album, the last album they did in the 90s, Show Business, and Brian also lets the cat out of the bag about their recording plans for the upcoming 2020 year. So you'll definitely want to check this one out. While you're here, hit that subscribe button below on my YouTube channel. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. Now, without further ado, let's get started with my conversation with KIX guitarist Brian Forsythe. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm really excited to have with me longtime KIX guitarist Brian Forsythe. How you doing, Brian?
Good.
Good. So, I think you're located now in Nashville, and we were talking a little bit before. Everything on your side with the pandemic and all, everything, your family, everybody safe, right?
Yeah, well, my family, part of my family's up in Maryland, and my two brothers are out in California, and so far everybody's well. So my mother's she's going to be 90 in
Wow.
July.
Oh, wow.
So we're like it's just like she wants to just go to the store like she always does, and we're like, no, you got to stay home.
Right. Now, where is she, in Maryland?
Yeah, well, she's up in Emmitsburg, Maryland.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, obviously the elderly, like my parents also, in their upper 70s, we have to make sure we keep them inside, keep them safe, etc. But
Yeah.
they want to get out and do their thing, right?
Yeah, she's almost oblivious. Well, like we suggested that she ask her neighbor to go. Like she has a PO box at to where she picks up her mail, and she lives it's a tiny little town, so it's like within walking distance. But we suggested that her neighbor go pick up her mail for her, and then the next thing we find out is that her neighbor drove there, but took my mother with her. Then while my mother was in the car with her, she says, "Oh, I need to go to the drugstore. I need to go here and there." And this lady just drove her everywhere. It's like all these different places.
Well intended, right?
Yeah.
Well intended. Now, for you on a professional level, it has to be a little odd, right? I mean, between KIX, Rhino Bucket, you've been playing live for 40 plus years, and now it just stopped. How weird is it for you not to have a gig?
Oh, it is. It's weird, and it's a little concerning. I mean, I'm not freaking out yet, but it's a little concerning because my career is based on crowds of people.
Sure, of course,
and
absolutely.
even when stuff starts to get back to normal, this is sports events and concerts are going to probably be the last things that fall back into place.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Now, you guys did a show, I think it was March 14th in North Carolina, was the last KIX show. That night, did you know that night, hey, this is going to be it for a while, or were you thinking still, hey, tomorrow's another show?
Nah, we kind of knew. We knew we were getting that last one in under the line,
Yep, absolutely.
And we were thinking about doing something like a couple weeks later up in Maryland. We were going to get together, but by that point, it was almost like, I don't know if I want to deal with flying on a flight, dealing with airports at this point.
Sure, of course.
And I would have been around my family, and it was like, nah, maybe not.
Right.
But yeah, that last show, it was pretty crazy because that was right about the time stuff was starting to shut down.
Yep, right.
And so we go there, and we were surprised it didn't get canceled to begin with. But the place, it was basically sold out. It was packed, and there's that street that it was on. There were so many people out. Like there was a club across the street and down a few buildings. Some huge, like 3-story beer garden type place, and it was. And I think it was a newer place, and they had a line all the way down the block waiting to get in, and the place was, I mean, you could see in the windows, like just a wall of people on every floor.
Right.
And we're thinking, what are these people thinking?
Right.
It was crazy. It was crazy. All the people that were out.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure you've seen some of the artists online doing performances. Like I've seen Sammy Hagar and his band, each band member's in their own house, but they're, I guess, syncing the recording somehow. Have you guys thought of doing anything like that for your fans?
No, people have asked us about it, but I've been seeing more and more. So I'm thinking, well, like, I don't know if I could figure out how to do it exactly.
Right.
'Cause I've done some like Zoom meetings with a bunch of different participants, and sometimes it's hard to get it coordinated. People talking over top of each other, and so I'm hoping maybe like Mark Shanker, our bass player, is the technical guy.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, well, maybe if he figures it out, maybe he could like let us all in on it, and then we can figure something out.
Right.
But I've seen a few of those that some of them are better than others. I saw the one that the Rolling Stones one from the other night.
Yep. What'd you think of that?
It was interesting, but you could tell there were like, Ron Wood was playing electric guitar, and you could hear him sort of hesitating to try to stay in sync with the rest of them. It wasn't like a natural feel thing.
Well, I thought it was great. Even Charlie Watts just playing like air drums pretty much, right? Like just like pretending to hit cymbals in the air. So I like you said, I thought it was interesting. I think it was supposed to be fun, not serious. And, I think that was pretty cool. So, kind of looking back a few months ago, you guys were on the Monsters of Rock cruise. And I know you guys have done that a number of times over the years, right? So how did you guys like doing those cruises?
Oh, they're fun. We've done them like every year, I think, since they started.
Yeah.
It's funny because when the first year that we did one, we were asked to do it. I remember thinking, oh man, that sounds like a nightmare, being trapped on this. It's, basically a big party boat, like hotel,
Sure.
like everything all in one, and there's no escape. And I'm thinking, I was just having like these anxiety, like nightmares about it. But it ended up turning out really cool. And the longer we did it, it's funny because the longer that we did it, the more we got used to it. But I think the fans also got used to it. So it's almost like they get used to seeing you hanging out, and it's not like they don't swarm you like the first time.
Right, absolutely. To me,
but the trick that I discovered was there's certain parts of the boat where it's harder to get through than others, like where you'll get swamped by people, and it's more like on the pool deck in the daytime when everybody's out there drinking in the sun. Yep. You don't want to walk through there. Right. So I avoid those spots, and then I'm usually pretty safe.
Right. When everybody's off the boat doing whatever excursions, then you're easy to walk around.
Yeah, that's when I get to go to like the fitness room or something. There's no in there.
Exactly. Now, to me, one of the cool things about those kind of cruises is there's a lot of bands, right? So like I think even this year, Kip Winger joined you guys up on stage for a performance of Balls of Fire, right? So how was that? Like, have you ever performed with him in the past? I know he helped write that song, but did you guys ever perform it with him previously?
No, that was it. I mean, I'm trying to remember I think we came up with that idea last year before M3, but we never pulled it off. So we thought we'd try it again on the boat. But yeah, that's the first time he's jumped up there with us. Yeah,
no, I saw that online, and to me, I was like, oh, that's really cool, kind of seeing him up there with you guys doing that old classic. What do you think is going to happen with the rock cruise industry? Do you think that's, you were talking before, concerts coming back, one of the last things. What do you think of the cruises?
It is a good question because, it's one thing, having a concert with a crowd, but the cruise, people are paranoid about those to begin with.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I'm not one of the paranoid type because I don't really, I never get sick for some reason. I think I'm just healthy and I have a positive attitude. I don't let it like freak me out. But a lot of people are freaked out about being confined to a cruise ship like that.
Absolutely, right.
So that, I don't know. I mean, that would be a shame if those things died out, you know?
Yeah, to me, they've been a great thing in the last, let's say, 10 years that rock bands have started doing. And I'm a big KISS fan. And I remember when they first announced their first one, I was like, oh, God, no. Exactly what you were saying. Why do I want to be on a boat with a couple of thousand people like that? And then I heard what happened. I'm like, that sounds cool. And now to me, it's like, I'll do any rock cruises if I'm available. I think they're a great thing. So hopefully they come back.
Yeah, definitely got my fingers crossed.
Absolutely. So I guess going back a couple of years now, right? You guys re-released the Blow My Fuse album, right? Remixed it. You put a whole bunch of demos on it. And then you guys went out on tour playing that whole album beginning to end. What was it like doing some of those songs, maybe like Piece of the Pie, Boomerang, songs you don't normally play live? What was it like after 30 years bringing them back into the set list?
Well, I remember when we first decided to do the album in its entirety, I was like, oh man, like I was just didn't want to even think about, because some of those songs, like Piece of the Pie, we never played live.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't played it since we recorded it.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, oh man, I got to learn that song. I don't even remember how to play it.
Right.
So that was the hurdle that we had to get over, just that mental like dread of having to learn these songs again. But once we did it, and then, first couple performances were a little rough, and then once the more we got used to them, the better it got. And then, we did it a full year, that set.
Yep.
And by the end of it, I was sort of sorry to see some of the songs leave. It was like, it was almost like, now that we can play them, we might as well just keep playing them, because if we drop them now and then bring them back again like a year or two later, it's going to be the same thing all over.
Right, it's going to be work all over again, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, what do you remember about recording that album back in, I guess, like 87, 88, you were recording that?
Yeah, 88. We started in the springtime of 88. Mm-hmm. It was, I always loved that. I mean, I love performing live, but recording in the studio is a lot of fun too, because you have the freedom of, doing a second take for one thing. Right. You mess it up. Live, you don't have that luxury. Right. But it was really cool. We did it out in Los Angeles, so we basically, they put us up in a couple of apartments out there, and we just lived there for a few months while we did it. And we got to record at some legendary studios, like Conway Studios, and then working with like Tom Werman, who is like he's a legend.
Absolutely.
He did some classic records. Some of my favorites, like the Cheap Trick in Color record is one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. So I was like, it was just cool to be able to work with him and then pick his brain, like what did Rick Nielsen do on this, or what was he playing? And it was pretty cool. Right. I mean, so that like every recording of a record is an experience, and really another cool bonus, while you're in a studio like that, in a studio situation, there's always other musicians in and out. And so at one point we were there, U2 came in there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To mix down that single Desire. Uh-huh. This was like, at their height. Mm-hmm, and they just kind of stroll in. They pull into the parking lot in a old classic 50s convertible. Mm-hmm. I forget what kind of car it was. And they were all in there. They was all piled in this classic car. Mm-hmm. And they just come in there, and it was so cool, because you're in the lounge, and there's like, what's his head? The singer guy. Bono? Bono. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just hanging out, eating the snacks, and, and the Edge, he borrowed my acoustic. He goes, you wouldn't happen to have like an acoustic laying around I could borrow, because he just wanted to strum it while they're doing the mixes. Okay. So I lent him my acoustic guitar, and it was cool. I mean, those are like the cool little, every time we've ever done a record, we meet people like that, just random, like legend rock star guys.
Right. That's very cool. To me, when I think back to that time, I was living in Brooklyn, New York at the time, and I was maybe a mile away from L'Amour's in Brooklyn. And you guys would come there, like, I felt like every 3 months you were in L'Amour's. To me, you were like the hardest working band of the 80s. Like I said, every 3 months, it's like, KIX is in town, I'm going to go see him. KIX is in town, I'm going to go see him. To me, it was an exciting time, when I look back at that, and those club shows were amazing to me.
Yeah. We were definitely like relentless. I mean, we just toured nonstop.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. My wife, who I've been married to now, for 30 years almost. She was a big Kix fan growing up, and she kept like a scrapbook of stuff. And I was looking through it before we were talking, and like I'm looking at like here from the '80s, like a Kix newsletter that
Oh
we had.
yeah, I remember those
and
things.
and like literally it's like Kix soon will have a hot new video, namely "Don't Close Your Eyes." Call MTV requests and the phone number and all of that. And you guys always would be handing out stuff like this at the club shows, trying to get people, calling MTV, kind of bringing up the fan interest and all of that. So to me, again, it's really cool stuff. Kind of going through that stuff again.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of stuff you had to do back before the internet.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to me, when I look back at that time, I look at some of your peers, whether it was Guns N' Roses, Poison, Cinderella. I think these are all bands that opened up for you at one point, and then they went on to bigger fame, probably than Kix did. Why do you think Kix? Why do you think Kix never went up to like that upper echelon? Because you guys are a great live band, maybe one of the best I've ever seen, to be honest with you. Why do you think you never made it up to that Poison, Cinderella, Guns N' Roses level?
That is a good question. I think it was a combination of things, like just bad timing, bad management, and we never sold out to what was going on at the time, like
Absolutely.
the Sunset Strip thing. Like we always try to keep our own thing together and be true to our roots. But
Absolutely.
I think the other little factor was a lot of bands were scared of us and didn't want to take us on a tour. And, it took a long time for that to happen.
Yeah.
And we thought, after Don't Close Your Eyes, we figured, okay, now, like with Hotwire, this is going to happen finally after all these years. But then, that was the end of the scene. And
unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. So, here's another little thing that happened along the way. I think it was right before Hotwire. One of those two albums, Blow My Fuse or Hotwire, I forget. I think it was Hotwire. Our dream tour was AC/DC.
Of course, yeah.
And about a month before we were going back into the studio, our management gets a call from AC/DC's management, and they wanted to put us on one of their tours. Oh. But we already had, I don't know if you know what's involved in like setting up a recording session, especially on a major label with a major producer. It takes months and months and months to line all that stuff up. And being a month out from the studio, we had to turn it down. It was like, oh man, it was like, who knows what would have happened with that.
Sure. Well, maybe in 2021, if they return, maybe then you could open up.
Yeah, maybe.
Going back to that time in the late 80s, again, kind of looking through some of the stuff in the scrapbook, there was an article that said, like, is KIX blowing RATT off the stage? So I think that was like one of the first, tours that you did with a big name band. And that's no disrespect to RATT, right? They were great. But I think to your point, that had to be a concern for some bands, because there it is, a headline in like Hit Parade or a Circus, whatever magazine the article came from, that said KIX is blowing RATT off the stage.
Right. And yeah, a lot of bands are terrified of that. And we actually made it a point to try to do that. I mean, that was one of our goals.
Of course, absolutely, as it should be.
But RATT was really cool about it. I mean, they were fans, and I think they may have known that we were giving them a run for their money, but I don't. But luckily, they were secure enough to not worry too much about it.
Right. So you have good memories of that tour with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, yeah. I mean, that kind of to be given that opportunity, after all that time, finally some band actually inviting us on a full tour.
Sure.
And here's the cool thing, this was, our whole career. That was I'm trying to think how many years at that point we had been doing it. But anyway, we basically toured in a van, and we drove ourselves around the country, just nonstop, playing, an hour and a half a night, maybe 2 hours. And then we get on this RATT tour. We have a tour bus. We get there. We go on at 7:30 or something like that. We're done by 8. It was like easiest gig in the world.
Sure.
So, we get out there and we have this half hour and we just put everything we had into that 1/2 hour. And it was like so easy for us, but
Sure.
I guess it was a blast for the fans, It was this burst of energy.
Right. And then I think on the following year, you went out on tour with Whitesnake as well, right? Same thing? Opening for them. So how was that tour in comparison to the RATT tour?
It was, well, it wasn't as much like RATT. There was more hanging out and, I'm trying to think of was there another band on that Whitesnake? I can't remember if it was just us two, but
I'm trying to remember. I saw the show in '91, but I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, because RATT, it was us, Brittany Fox, and RATT. So we all would hang out together, and so it was this whole big community. But with Whitesnake, it was a little more separate.
Right.
I mean, they were nice and all, and you'd pass David Coverdale in the hallway, and he'd go, "Hello, boys."
Right.
But that was the extent of it.
Sure. Now, is there any truth? Go. Were you going to say something? Did I cut you off?
Oh no, I was going to say, but overall, it was still a good tour.
Awesome.
And here's the other thing.
Yeah.
I'm like I'm a blues bass guitar player,
Sure.
so that whole wheedly deedly finger tapping thing was sort of, not my thing, and I didn't really follow a lot of those guitar players. But I just have to say, between Warren DeMartini and Steve Vai, Warren's more he sort of slants towards the blues thing. At least he was by the time we played with them. But he's such a natural player. I used to watch him every night, and the same with Steve Vai. For one of those hotshot guys, man, that guy was good.
Right.
It didn't translate like the greatest in an arena setting. Steve Vai, it was a lot really echoey, so it was hard to hear what he was doing. But I got to sit right there on the side of the stage and watch him.
Right. And during that time, Whitesnake was into more of a poppier sound, which I loved. It's not a criticism, but definitely his blues style guitar was not utilized maybe as much on some of those pop songs either.
Yeah.
So who do you say your guitar heroes were growing up, or even during that whole 80s time period?
Well, I'm a little older, so my heroes were from the 60s and 70s.
Sure, of course.
So I would say, God, there's so many. But my biggest influence as far as my style, I would say, was Billy Gibbons.
Okay, nice.
Him and then like Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers. I was a big Southern rock guy, or Alan Collins from Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Okay, yeah.
And then later on, there was Angus Young, of course. But Angus, the funny thing is, Angus and Billy Gibbons are similar, very similar in styles.
Okay.
But so it was more like the Southern rock blues based, Texas blues, and I like all that kind of stuff.
Cool. Very cool. Now, I know we were talking about the RATT tour. We talked about Whitesnake. Did you guys also open up a couple of shows for David Lee Roth in the mid-'80s?
Just one.
Just one. And is there any truth? I have read that he pulled the plug on you guys in the middle of, towards the end of your performance. Is that true?
Well, I don't know if it was him personally.
Right. No, not him personally. Somebody on his team. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And that's probably why we only had one show with him.
What happened there?
Well, it was like, this happened a lot, around Baltimore. They would throw us on a show if the ticket sales were kind of lagging to boost the sales. So this was at the Baltimore Civic Center, and we got put on that show. And, you have a specific time that you have to play, and especially being in the opener, you have to stick to the schedule.
Sure.
So we're we get there, and they have this nice stage with these raised platforms out to the sides that go out. They're like these wings, and I guess those were like we weren't supposed to go up there. Those were the areas we had to stay away from. They said you can do anything you want down here, but don't go up there. So we didn't, and we did our show, and we were on the last song, and I remember them giving us like the 5-minute sign. You got 5 more minutes. And we had plenty of time to finish the song.
Sure.
And for some reason they figured that we weren't paying attention, or I don't know what happened. And the next thing we know, both Ronnie and I, the whole stage goes dead except for the drums. It's the only Jimmy's still playing. and the house lights come on, and we're like, what? Like, we had like 2 minutes left of a song, and they do this. So to rebel, Donnie runs up onto the place where he's not supposed to go, the forbidden zone. He just goes running up there, and he turns his back to the audience and acts like he's taking a pee on the stage there.
That's great.
You know, does that whole thing, but he wasn't. He was just faking it.
It was an act.
And so that was sort of like giving the finger to the band, road crew. So we come off stage, and I remember, well, Donnie was first because he goes running up there, does that display, and then goes running off, you know. So we all grab our stuff, and we're walking off back behind the stage, and there's Donnie on the ground with the road crew on top of him. They tackled him, and he was like on his back, and some guy had his hands around Donnie's throat, like he's strangling him. And Donnie had I think the guy had long hair, and Donnie had a fistful of the guy's hair and was pushing the guy up. The whole big scuffle going on back there. And it was a mess. And there was standing off to the side was what's his name? Andy Schechter, I think, from Hit Parader.
Okay.
Like, he was there to cover the show. And it was the funniest thing because Hit Parader was the magazine where we used to put our ad in the back.
Okay.
Like every month we paid for that ad, that little KIX ad, but they would never write about us. Right. So finally, this was the one thing that caused this guy to write something about us in his magazine.
Oh man! So, and then, like you said, you never played with Dave again, right?
No.
Right. But, you touched on something there that, whenever bands were going through the Maryland area, if they need to sell tickets, knock on KIX's door, and that would do it. And that holds true even today. The M3 Festival that you mentioned earlier, every year that they do, you guys headline one night of that festival every year, 15, 18, 20,000 people there. What's that like for you to play a local show like that every year to 15, 20,000 fans that are just as excited as it was 1988 to see you guys?
Oh, it's definitely cool. I mean, it's so funny, when we reunited back in at the end of 2003, we were thinking we were just going to do a few shows and have fun, and that would be it. We had no idea it was going to keep going like this. So now it's like every year M3 comes around and we get out there. It's almost like this thing where we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, how long are these people going to keep coming? We're thinking they're going to go away at some point, but they don't. And you come out there and you look out, and it's 10,000 people as far as you can see, and it's like, wow, they're still here, and they still love us.
Yes.
It's like, it's very, very, very cool.
Absolutely. Now, I know you touched a little bit. You said like that there was a break time period for KIX in the mid 90s, but just before that, I think you had left the band actually like in the early 90s, right before they did the Show Business album. But then you actually came back, I guess, as a hired musician, if I've read properly, right, to help record the album. Explain what was going on in the band with you at that time.
Yeah, this was 93 is when I left. This was after Hotwire, so things were starting to go downhill, and I saw it. I knew it wasn't ever gonna. It was gonna keep going down. It wasn't gonna go back up. And at that point, I'd been in the band for 19 years. It was a long time, and I was like, oh man, all those years of struggling to get to that point, and then it just it's sinking, and it's like. And we never quite, like you said, we never broke through to the, we just stayed under that like layer.
The best kept secret in rock and roll.
Yeah. So it was very disillusioning. And I remember, well, there was one point we were playing a show. I was in the middle of a show. Maybe it was at Hammerjacks somewhere. And I just had that little change of, that thing, a moment of clarity in my mind where I was like, I just felt silly all of a sudden, and it was like, man, I can't do this anymore. And there were other factors. The band was having some internal problems, and it might have been, frustration, like everybody's frustration, and so I decided I was going to leave, and I put a band together. I took my frequent flyer miles and flew out to LA and back like that whole fall before I left, the fall and the winter before I ended up leaving. And I put a band together in LA, and so I lined all that stuff up. But so I ended up quitting the band, and it was the week I left. I think it was the week that the live record was released.
Okay.
And which was kind of weird because I was on the cover. My guitar and my hands were on the cover.
On the cover. Yep. Absolutely.
So anyway, yeah, I have a couple brothers that live out in California, so I lined up a job with my older brother painting signs, and so I move out there, and then a little while later, those guys call me up to see if I'd be interested in recording another record. And so at that point, I'm not in the band, so they hire me as an outside musician, and that was actually a lot of fun because there was none of the pressure of being an actual band member.
Sure.
I was a hired guy. They were paying me. I was actually making more money than anyone in the band for doing it.
That's funny.
Yeah. And it was weird because it was almost like, Donnie, who's a great songwriter, and he wrote all those great songs, but he's also a control freak. So a lot of times there was a lot of pressure from him to play the song the way he wanted it, and a lot of our freedom to be creative was sort of stifled. But for some reason, being a hired guy, he kind of gave me more respect to let me just do what I do at that point. So it was almost like doing that last record, I was like, man, I wish it felt like this all the time. I wouldn't have
Right. Now, what'd you think of the songs on that album? Do you like the album?
Some of it. I'll say some of it.
Okay.
I think at that point, it was rough because, the whole scene had changed.
Absolutely.
But we were trying not to. But, Donnie, he was good at actually taking current like, styles of music sort of, but not, and then sort of incorporating them, but not being blatant about it. So you didn't really know where he was getting his sources. So I think he was struggling at that time, finding a way to write songs and keep it current, but keep our sound at the same time, which is always a challenge.
Absolutely. To me, that's one of the things, and we were touching on that a little bit before. KIX never gave in to whatever the trend was at that moment. So in the mid 80s, you guys never came out with full makeup and eyeliner, and you didn't look like Poison, let's just say, right? Or Motley Crue, even in the early time of them. You guys always blue jeans, t-shirts. You're just your average rock and roll band. And I mean that in a complimentary way, right? Then grunge came in. You guys didn't turn into a grunge album. Most of those 80s bands did their grunge album in the early mid 90s. You guys still put out a KIX album. So you always stay true to yourselves to me. And that's, to me, one of the things I always loved about the band.
Yeah, we did go through a little bit of a glam period, but not quite, over the top like Poison. It was more I've always been like a Keith Richards fan. I love, especially early 70s Keith. And so when the glam thing came around, it was almost like I'd always wanted to do that anyway, because so it was almost gave me the freedom to do it, but I always did it in more of a Keith Richards, Johnny Thunders, like that dark, like sleazy kind of way.
Absolutely.
I didn't want to be the pretty guy.
Right.
So I think that helped to be able to do it that way. And then Guns N' Roses came along and they sort of confirmed that sleazy part of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But as far as the music, we didn't give in. The other thing too is we would see other bands do that, and it was the kiss of death. Like once you start chasing a trend, it's over.
Right.
You have to sort of just do what you do best and hope that people follow that instead of you following what you think the people want to hear.
Sure, absolutely. Now, you touched before on the songwriting. I agree, Donnie Pennell is a great songwriter. I know the first couple of albums, you had some songwriting credits. I think it was Contrary Mary, Love at First Sight on the first album. I think you have songwriting credits on those. As the albums progressed, you got less and less to the point where you pretty much had none. Was that something that bothered you during the time, or were you okay with that?
Yeah, well, a lot of those songwriting credits, they're more of like my contribution to that certain song. And there was a few on the first record that Donnie sort of just divided up, because in the early days, we would write songs as a band. He would just bring in just the basics on like an acoustic guitar even, and we'd all throw our own stuff onto it. And a couple of those, like Love at First Sight, Love Pollution, those were Steve and I. We collaborated in, but it was more like a Steve song that he brought to me, and then I would, it was very basic, and then I'd throw like a cool guitar riff on top of it or something. Well, actually, Love Pollution was my lick. I forgot about that.
Right.
Steve wrote the lyric.
Okay.
but later on, Donnie the songs got, as he matured as a songwriter, the demos got more involved, and it got to the point where he'd bring a finished song to us, we'd maybe add something here and there, of course, the guitar solos, but so yeah. And here's the other thing is he had so many ideas. He would have like just one after another, and we couldn't keep up, and we were always working on his stuff. So it almost like for every 10 songs he had, I'd have one idea for a song.
Sure.
But because we were always working on his stuff, my stuff never got developed, or it just wasn't up to par to what he had, and I knew it wasn't. So it was like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to make these guys go through this.
Right. Okay. All right. Now, so
well, the other thing too is Donnie. He could write towards a particular style, like the KIX thing, which I guess probably was his style. But for me, I had trouble personally writing in a certain direction. Like for me, I just sort of write whatever I feel. So I have tapes, collections of songs that I've written over the years, but they'll be like country songs, they'll be like Stones sounding songs, they'll be like pop songs, they'll be like, all over the place.
Right. Stuff you felt wouldn't maybe fit into KIX. Is that the point?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
Would you ever think of releasing that stuff like as a solo project or on the internet or something for your fans?
Maybe. I wouldn't close my mind to it.
I think you should.
Well, it's funny because I kind of just never thought about it. I did because I just did it for fun.
Sure.
But I would go through the process of making some little rough demo, so they are on a tape somewhere. And when I first moved to Nashville, a friend of mine came to visit from LA, and I remember she came to my house to visit, and she was asking me about stuff like, are there any songs that you ever sang on, or this or that? So I started pulling out some stuff and showing it to her, and actually playing it for her, and it almost re-sparked that thing. It was like, because I was thinking of it like, they're just stupid little songs that I did.
Right.
And I started playing them, and she was like, that's not bad.
Right.
And then I started thinking, maybe this isn't as bad as I think it is. So yeah, maybe someday I will, like, maybe, because since I'm living here in Nashville, and it's the music scene here is just amazing, and there's so many amazing musicians. I could probably just get just a collection of people and just throw together some stuff. It would be fun.
Yeah, and I think that'd be awesome. I think to your point, in the 80s, when most of us were teenagers, our bands, we expected to have one sound. But now, I think as we've gotten older, our minds have matured. We're open to different types of music. And I think it would be cool to kind of hear those different sides of your personality and your music interest.
Yeah, it would be. It would be fun to do. I'm a big fan of like novelty songs with like kind of funny lyrics, So I've got a few of those too.
Okay, well, hopefully you decide to release it. So talking about the different styles, to me, like the KIX catalog, the Cool Kids album is the one that somewhat sticks out a little bit as a bit unique in musical style. What was the thought process going through that? And when you look back at it now, whatever it is, almost 35, 40 years, whatever it is, you look back at that album and what do you think of it?
Well, I think it's common knowledge that everybody knows that the band doesn't really, that's our least favorite. But I think it's, there are some good songs on that record, but the thing was, Well, there were here again. There's several factors. We did the first record, and that was those were the songs that were written like late 70s. Those songs have been around a while. They had time to mature. We played them live, and the record company, when they signed us, they sort of let us go at the beginning. So that first record was pretty much just us, and nobody told us what to do. I mean, we had a producer, Tom Allum, who he tried to rearrange some stuff a couple times. I remember doing some pre-production, and he would rearrange it. We'd play it, and he'd listen to it, and he'd go, "Nah, just do what you were doing." So it ended up being just like what we were doing. So that first record was basically us, and then it came time to do the second record, and that's when the record company jumped in, and they tried to sort of control the direction, and they were trying to get us to be more poppy and single oriented, because there were no singles except for the Itch, I think, on that first record, and so they wanted singles, the record company. And this was before this was Atlantic Records. They didn't have a heavy metal, hard rock like kind of section. It was everything was together. I mean, we were lumped in with Phil Collins and stuff like that.
Sure.
So they didn't know what to do with this. So the only thing they knew what to do would have us do singles. So that's why that record, it is more poppy, and it was kind of like 83. What was his name? Pete Solly, who produced that. He had done a Romantics record, and his claim to fame was doing like commercial jingles, and he was real like pop kind of producer. And so that was one part of it. The other part was Ronnie wasn't there.
Right, that's right.
Like Ronnie left the band for that record for I forget how many months. It was not quite a year, but maybe a year. He had some personal issues that he had to take care of at that time. And so we didn't have Ronnie. We had Brad Divins, who's a super nice guy, but he wasn't Ronnie. So that was missing. There, it's like this missing piece. And yeah, so that's sort of like all those things together sort of made the record come out the way it did. But here's the other thing: they also threw 3 cover songs for us to do.
Right.
So Body Talk, Cool Kids, and Burning Love were outside songs, which we sort of made them sound like KIX songs, but they weren't really,
Right. Now,
So
look, I'll say, as much of a departure as it is, I still love that album. I loved it back then also. And I remember it must have been 92 or 93. I went to see you guys in concert, and you guys did Body Talk that night, which I hadn't seen you do for maybe ever. And I was excited. I was like, yeah, as weird and as non-KIX this is, it's kind of cool to hear this live. Do you guys ever talk about playing it? And I know you do, like For Shame and stuff like that with Mighty Mouth. I think you do. Do you ever talk about doing any of those, or is it no? Let's leave that in the past. We're good now.
no, we did. We actually pulled out. We've pulled out Body Talk a couple times.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
Since we've gotten back together.
Okay.
We would only play it like a handful of shows, and then that'd be the end of it again.
Right,
But
right.
we pulled that one out. We were actually doing Restless Blood there at the end there before the plug was pulled on the country.
Yeah.
What else do we do? I think that's it off that record. It would be cool to do. Oh, in Love Pollution, we've done that.
Okay.
And we did that for that XM radio, Sirius XM live thing. It was like the first year we were together, back together. But it would be cool to do one song because every once in a while we'll talk about, like, well, maybe we should do another song we haven't done in a while, and everybody will throw out little suggestions. And suggestions off that record, I would love to do like Nice on Ice. I think would be a cool
Nice.
one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To me, that's one of the great things about going to see KIX, and I've seen you guys many times. the set list is always different. You know, you have your standards in there. You'll always do your Cold Bloods and yeah, and stuff like that.
We have to.
Right, of course. Fans would be upset if you didn't, right? But then, you know, I'll call it the other tracks, you know, whether it's Lie Like a Rug, Sex, or whatever it is, you guys are always like mixing it up. How do you decide on a night-to-night, month-to-month basis what you want to do to keep it fresh?
Well, we just sort of we do it through email. So we'll just throw out this email and people will put in suggestions. And if it's, you know, sometimes it'll be a song. And it depends too, because, you know, it could be a song that Steve struggles with singing or something. And he'll go, nah, you know, I don't want to do that. So then we'll have to forget about that idea. Or, you know, or it'll be a song that one guy will want to do and the rest of us will be going, no. You know, it's just it's a kind of a group conscience, you know.
Right. You mentioned Steve. To me, it's amazing when I see you guys, you know, now. He has still as much energy as he did in the 80s. And I've said to my wife a few times, I don't know where he gets that energy from. I feel like I'm still watching a 25-year-old kid on stage.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm grateful that he still does. But he's kept in shape, you know, and he's health conscious, you know, as far as like working out and keeping physical, and he's got a routine. An hour before showtime, he goes into this routine and nobody can disturb him, and he's like jogging in place and doing push-ups and vocal things like yelling into a towel. And
Right.
So he's got his whole thing that gets him ready for that.
Absolutely. Now, I know a couple of years ago, I think it's a couple of years at this point, Ronnie had missed a few shows, you know, with some health-related concerns. Is everything on his side okay these days?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. He had a little bit of, you know, some drug problems along the way, as did I, you know, in the 90s. So, yeah, he had to sort of check himself back into rehab a couple times, but he's been doing good.
Excellent.
Which you know, and it's always when those things happen, you know, and Ronnie would have to go away. We always would talk about getting a fill-in, but then we thought, well, no, maybe we should just do it without Ronnie. You know, do it 3-piece, well, 4-piece with Steve, but. You know, instead of trying to incorporate another guy in there and you know, because that always changes the vibe when you bring another person and having to teach the songs to the person, and then, you know, it's better just to leave the hole open, you know, for Ronnie to come back, you know. That's the way we've been handling it.
Right.
Or we've handled it up until, I mean, it's been pretty smooth.
Absolutely. Now, I know you just mentioned that you had a drug issue in the past, and I was just recently reading about when you were in a band with Steven Adler and that whole story. So talk a little. So I never even realized that you were in a band with him, to be honest with you. So talk about that whole experience with me.
Oh, well, that wasn't even a proper band situation. It was like a rehearsal situation.
Gotcha.
Like we never even made it out of his rehearsal space. And I don't even remember how long that it really lasted. It turned into this, you know, Stephen wanted to put together this project. It was to do a residency at a club and do covers, and I guess probably like we never even got a set list together, but I'm sure some Guns N' Roses songs would have been involved at some point, but it never got that far, especially with me. But yeah, there were drugs involved, so it quickly fell off the rails, like quick. And it went from being this idea to put together this band to just Steven and I running around copping drugs. I mean, that became the main focus, like quick. And before I knew it, I was booted and blamed for the situation, which, you know, I did have my part in it. But yeah, that whole 90s for me was there was a dark time. You know, I've struggled with that whole addiction thing for a long time, but it really kicked into overdrive when I got out to LA and yeah, it ran rampant. But at the same time, it was like, you know, I try to look at things positively, and even like the worst things that you go through usually turn out to be the best things that you could have gone through at that time. And for me, that whole drug thing, and at the end of the 90s, I was arrested, thrown in jail, and went through this whole thing. And it seemed like, I mean, it was a disaster at the time, but it's turned out to be a blessing, you know. And in the same, not only going through that whole thing, but being in LA when I did it, because there's the recovery community in LA is like no other. It's like the best place that I ever could have gone through that, gotten sober, and all my friends from out there, or most of my friends from out there, are all like sober people.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. And then, so at what point did you move out to Nashville then, right? So this is the mid 90s, late 90s, I guess, that you're still in LA.
Yeah, that's when I went through the whole drug, jail, rehab, and then I just moved here a year ago.
Oh, so it's recent. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I was in LA for 26 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I'm assuming you like Nashville at this point in your life better than LA in terms of living and whatever?
Well, as far as the vibe, yeah. But I love the weather in LA. There's nothing like the weather out
absolutely.
there. That's why I went there. And I miss that. Like now I'm back into the seasons again, and I'm like, oh, I got to deal with this. But at least Nashville, it's a little more mild than Maryland. Maryland was like, and Maryland wasn't as bad as some places, like say Michigan or somewhere up there, or Chicago. But you know, still you had to deal with the snow. But here you don't. It's not as much. It gets cold, and you'll get a little tiny bit of a dusting of snow here and there, but it's nothing like, you know, you're not going to see 3 feet of snow down here.
Right, absolutely. So you touched before about like in the 90s, obviously KIX stopped playing, stopped recording, stopped touring for about 10 years almost. And then the early 2000s, I remember it picked up a little bit, like you said, in the Maryland area. And I'm in New York, and I remember thinking, I should take the drive. I want to see them. And then little by little, you started expanding it and you started to come around New York. But how did that all start to come back together again after almost 10 years?
Okay, well, yeah, when Steve and I first discussed this getting back together thing, you know, the whole purpose of it was just to do a few shows, like have some fun, like, you know, because we hadn't played together in so long, and he knew there was a little bit of interest because he had that band Funny Money.
Sure.
And Ronnie would come up, and Ronnie's band would open, the Blues Vultures would open for Funny Money, and then Ronnie would jump up on stage for the encore, and they'd do KIX songs. And so you know, they knew there was some interest still. Like people would love it. They'd eat it up. So we planned on these shows, and we weren't sure if we like at that point, we didn't even know if we were allowed to use the name KIX. So the first batch of shows, it was the holidays in 2003. So it was right at the end of 2003, and it was a show in Baltimore. I forget, there was like 3 or 4 shows. I forget how many we did, but we called it 4 out of 5 KIX.
I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, it was like the reunion shows. So we did those. And it was like immediately sold out every show. And I mean, it was like such a cool time. And we ended it. It was like, oh man, that was fun. It was almost like taking a ride on a roller coaster. Sure. You get off and you want to get back on. So we thought we should do that again. So we booked another batch of shows for the following September, like early 2004 or mid 2004. We did those, and that was, you know, same thing happened. So then we booked another set of shows for the following holidays, the winter of 2004, and that we just started doing that. And the more we did it, the more interest we got from other places around, and so it started to expand a little. And I remember thinking, how did I stumble onto the idea? I remember maybe I heard about, like, say, Great White or Warrant, and those bands were doing tours, and I'm thinking, I wonder who's booking these guys. And I started poking around with booking agents, and I asked Steve about it, because I think what it was the shows were starting to take off. they'd be like these concentrated group of shows together, and Steve was trying to take care of the business, and he was starting to get overwhelmed with it. So I said, well, what about, like, what would you think about getting a booking agent? He says, well, if you can find one, you're welcome to look around. So I started doing that. I started doing the research, and I started looking at who's booking these guys, and what are these guys doing? And I first reached out to this agency in the Midwest. I think it was ARM or something. I forget what they were called. And I talked to this guy. Was it John Donegal? Some guy. I forget it. I think that was his name. This booking agent. And I talked to him about KIX, and he was kind of like, I don't know. He goes, I don't know if anybody would be interested. So he passed. He goes, but, I have this guy that used to work for me that's out in L.A. now. You could talk to him. I'll give you his number. And it was Sullivan Big. Okay. So he gives me Sullivan's number, and I call Sullivan. And it turns out Sullivan is originally from Boston. And he's an East Coast guy. He was a huge KIX fan. Okay. So as soon as I mentioned KIX, he was like, oh, my God, I would love to book you guys. So it was like perfect. It was perfect. Like he was the perfect fit for us. So I get Sullivan involved, and I remember when he first called Steve, it was like pulling teeth. Like Steve was so comfortable playing Baltimore that he didn't want. In Steve's mind, it was like he didn't think. He was thinking kind of like that other booking agent. He was like, nah, like nobody's gonna remember us. Like if we go somewhere in the Midwest, they're gonna go KIX who? Like he didn't think it was possible, but I had faith, and Sullivan definitely had faith. He knew he could sell us, and so the first show out of the area that he actually got us was Rocklahoma in 2008. Yep. Okay. And so we get out there. The funny thing was that whole experience, that show was a disaster because of this, like, I don't know if it was a tornado, but it was like tornado-like storm blew through right. Like in the early evening, like a couple bands before we were supposed to go on, and shut the whole thing down and knocked down the side stages. And finally it subsided, so the band started back up on the main stage. And I got a hair in my mouth. I forget who went on before us. It might have been Lynch Mob, something. Okay. But so we get ready to play, and then as soon as we start walking towards the stage, it starts to rain. The rain starts coming down again. Okay. And by the time they announce this and we get out there, it's just a downpour. Okay. But it worked out in our favor because the lull in the storm was enough for the people to come back in front of the stage. Okay. And then by the time it started raining again, they wanted to see us, and they stayed. Okay. So there we were in front of like 20,000 people in this downpour, and every time the lightning would flash, you could see the crowd. Like other than that, it was just you could see the front in front of the stage. Couldn't see how far back it went. Right. But it was a magical experience, and it opened Steve's eyes to the possibility that, people do want to see us. So he kind of loosened up a little and let Sullivan start doing his thing, and it just was a gradual build and to what it is now. Right. Well, to what it was a month or two ago. Right, exactly. So you mentioned before, and I know perhaps legally you're not allowed to talk about these kind of things, but you mentioned before about maybe not being able to use the band name. Was there legal fights? Obviously, Donnie wasn't involved in the reunion. Were there legal fights going on about the KIX band name at that point? No, we didn't know if there was going to be. So I think it was soon after those first few shows, Mark Schenker took it upon himself to do a name search and found out that nobody owned the name. Oh, okay. So he right away went and got the whatever it is, the copyright or whatever the license for it, whatever you do to get a secure name. So we got it. So now we own the name. Okay, excellent. So that way we can do all the merch and not have to worry about it. Right. So like you just said, Mark's been in the band since that 2003 time reunion. Was there ever any talk of including Donnie? Have you spoke to Donnie at all since this all came back together? No, you know, I talked to him about 6 months before Steve called me. I talked to Donnie. Donnie was well, besides Ronnie moved to LA for a little bit in the early 2000s
Mm-hmm.
or late 1990s. That's when Ronnie moved out because I was still, yeah, I hadn't gotten sober yet. But so I had seen Ronnie around, and I actually sat in with his band a couple times in LA, and
Mm-hmm.
so Ronnie was the only one I really kept in touch with over the years.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So besides, that next time when Steve calls me, I talked to Donnie in that about 6 months before that. So Donnie was the only other one I had talked to since then,
Mm-hmm.
and it was weird. I just decided one day I was looking through some old phone numbers, and I saw Donnie's number, and I thought, I wonder if he still has the same number. And I just called him out of the blue, and his girlfriend answers, and she goes, "Yeah, he's out there with the dogs. Let me get him."
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Calls out in the yard, and Donnie comes in, and he gets on the phone, and it was great. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we had a great talk, and we were talking about old times, and very friendly talk. And Donnie was like that. When business wasn't involved, he was the greatest guy,
Mm-hmm.
nicest guy. I mean, he was fun to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was cool. And then later, when Steve calls me about getting KIX back together, the subject of Donnie comes up, and Steve and Donnie had a really bad falling out in the mid '90s when the band broke up.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve didn't want to deal with that anymore. He's like, no, if we do this, he goes, my only thing is, Donnie can't be involved, or I won't do it.
Okay.
So that was the thing, and it's funny because nobody else either. No one else in the band wanted that either,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm always I'm always the one with the open mind,
Mm-hmm.
but when they started talking about it, it was like, yeah, well, it would be Donnie was hard to work with when it came to the business. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I just went along with those guys. So then, once the band got back together, of course, Donnie wasn't happy about that. I mean, nobody talked to him after that, but it turns out, anyone that we run into that had seen Donnie around or talked to him, it was like he didn't want anything to do with us, and he didn't even want to talk about the band anymore. So that kind of ended it.
Well, I think Mark was a great addition to the band, and so we spoke about the fact that you started doing more and more touring, and then perhaps what even might have seemed more unlikely, you guys decided to record a new album. So talk about that and what that was like after 20 years almost putting out another new album.
Yeah, well, that topic came up quite a few times over the years while we were still doing those shows.
Sure.
We'd always kind of blow it off like nobody wanted to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, Steve still had his Funny Money thing going, like because KIX shows weren't constant at that point. They were still in little batches, so we had a lot of downtime. So Steve was still doing those. He was still doing shows, and Ronnie still has his Blues Vultures thing too, to this day.
Yep.
So he was doing his Blues Vultures thing, and I was doing Rhino Bucket.
Yep.
So we all had our own band. So that was the way we'd handle it. Like anytime, like in an interview, when that would come up, when's KIX doing another record? The stock answer was, well, Steve would go, I've got Funny Money, Ronnie's got Blues Vultures, Brian's got Rhino Bucket. If you want to hear like our individual stuff, just listen to one of those bands. So that's how we would handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But there came a point where there was a lot of pressure, and people really wanted it, and it all came about through that live DVD that we put out. It was a Ram's Head live show in Baltimore.
Yep, the Baltimore show. Yep.
And we had some friends. These guys Mark is closer to these guys, but they're friends of the band, and they used to come around up in Connecticut at this place, the Mohegan Sun, and they would just for fun they film parts of the show, and it always looked good. So Mark asked them about coming down to Baltimore and doing an official shoot, a DVD shoot, do a DVD thing. So they did, and it turned out so well that Mark was like, "Hey, man, we should sell this thing. We should you're trying to get some kind of distribution deal through some label." So he reached out to that Italian label, Frontiers, and yeah, of course they said, "Yeah, we'll do it." And they said, "But if we distribute this DVD, we want to do this little contract where you guys will have to do a studio record too."
Okay.
Like part of the deal. So we agreed to it. We thought, without even like having any songs together or anything, we just said okay, and then we thought we'd just cross that bridge when we got there. And Frontiers they're one of those labels that they've got a lot of retro bands on there from the 80s. But their whole thing is just the distribution. Like they don't deal with any studio costs or expenses, or like the band has to deal with everything on their own, and they just hand over the stuff to them. So they don't really do a whole lot. They just sort of put it out there.
Sure.
And so that's kind of what they did with this DVD. And so we started. It was first Mark and I got together, and we took everybody's demos, all Steve's stuff. Mark had a bunch of stuff. Him and this guy Rob wrote together. So we threw everybody's ideas into a pile, and Mark and I just sat there and started sorting through it. And in the meantime, this DVD thing, it started selling, and then before we knew it, it got shut down. They got a letter from Donnie's lawyers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it turned out that they didn't, Frontiers didn't do their homework. They didn't do the paperwork. They didn't take care of the licensing of the DVD. And it's one thing, like you can record a live record of anybody's songs. They still get paid their publishing,
sure,
but you don't have to clear the songs to play them live. It's a whole different thing. But when you film them, it becomes a film, and you have to pay licensing fees.
Okay.
And it has to be cleared with the songwriters. And, of course, Donnie wasn't going to approve that for us.
Right. Okay.
So he sicked his lawyers on the record company, and they had to cut the DVD.
Okay.
And if they would have done... cleared it like they were supposed to and done it, it would have been no problem.
Sure.
But they didn't. But at that same point, like we were starting to put songs together, we stumbled onto Loud and Proud Records, or Mark did. And we thought, man, that might be a better idea. And because Frontiers screwed up with the DVD, it gave us the perfect excuse to get off the label and not have to, fill our obligation to do a record for them.
Okay.
So that's how we did that.
Okay.
And I forget your initial question.
we were just talking about recording the new album, and I guess so. You mentioned earlier how you enjoyed being in the studio, recording albums. People would come in. I have to envision, though, 20 years later, doing a new album. It was much different. What was it like doing a new album?
Oh, it was a lot different.
Yeah.
For one thing, we didn't have Donnie. Donnie was the songwriter, so it took a lot of pressure off us in that area.
Sure.
Because he had these great songs, we just had to sort of do them. So that was a lot of pressure. Luckily, Mark is a good songwriter too.
Absolutely.
So, the other thing. Luckily Taylor Rhodes is still around, and I had the idea, we should reach out to, I thought about, like, Beau Hill came up for that project.
Okay.
But I thought, Taylor Rhodes was actually one of Donnie's songwriting partners.
Sure.
He wrote songs with Donnie. He knows kind of how Donnie's mind worked, when it came to that. And my biggest concern was keeping it KIX-like.
Sure.
And I thought it would be better than bringing in Taylor to keep it on the KIX track,
Sure, absolutely.
So that was one blessing in disguise. But as far as the recording, recording process was way different, because in the old days it was, major studios.
Sure.
You'd be at Conway or Atlantic Studios or Criteria Studios. This time it was in Mark's house, because Mark has one of his bedrooms set up like a little, his nice setup, but it's still in his house,
Sure.
which is cool for him, because he could, we'd leave and he'd just walk down the hallway and go to his bedroom.
Right, exactly.
But so we did the bulk of the recording there at his house, and the making of the record DVD, you can see it. We're in his little room there.
Yep.
We did go back and do drum tracks at a studio, and it was a studio down in Falls Church, I think, somewhere down near DC. But so yeah, that made it a lot different. Pro Tools was a lot different, because that wasn't even around back in like the late day. I think when we did Show Business, that one was. What did we use back? I'm trying to think how we recorded in those days. I could think it was DAT machines or something.
Okay.
I forget. It was starting to be digital at that point, but it still wasn't like the Pro Tools on the computer thing. So this was the first record dealing with that. But I had recorded with Rhino Bucket doing that stuff before, so I was used to it. And in a way, it's a lot easier that way. But the way that the process we used for this record was completely backwards. We did get together for pre-production in Mark's other empty bedroom. We had all these tiny little amps that Ronnie and I would play through, and Jimmy would play on this little electronic drums. So we actually played together to do the pre-production, which is a lot of fun. I'm always leery of trying to do everything separately, like just piece it together, and people ask about doing it long distance, and I'm like, it always feels better to get in the same room with somebody.
Sure. Absolutely.
So at least we did that part of it together, and then when it came to recording, Jimmy he programmed the drum tracks first, and then Ronnie and I laid down all the guitars to the drums using, doing the Pro Tools thing, just plug it straight in through those fake amps, the amps, the sounds that are in there, just to get it. And we'd record through that to hear it through an amp, but we'd also send a direct signal. So it had just the direct guitar signal. Okay. And then we we put most of the vocals on. I think we did all the vocals there at Mark's house. But then we took all those tracks down to the studio. And then Jimmy put live drums to them. He just play them back, and then we did a few guitar overdubs at the proper studio. But then they took those direct guitar tracks that we initially did and ran them through, like Ronnie and I, our regular amp setups. We had those down in Mark's basement, and we direct signal and ran them through. So it was our amp sounds at the end coming through. And the reason we did that instead of actually using the amps to begin with was because it would have been like weeks of guitar, and all Mark's neighbors would be hearing these Marshalls blasting in his basement for weeks on end. So this way he could take one day and just run all the tracks and get it over with.
Right. Wow. That's I find that fascinating, because I've never recorded an album, but everything I've read is always drums were first, and then everything else gets layered on top of it. And it sounds like Jimmy kind of came in the back end with the live drum sound. Yeah,
it's upside down.
Yeah,
and the guitar sounds.
Right.
It's like, how's that going to work? But it worked, and listening back to it, it's like, well, that is my guitar sound, because that's my amp. That's my guitar signal running through the amp. But it was the cool thing about it was. As far as guitars go, I did all the solos and all that, and you could once you're running the signal through the amp, you could actually dial the amp in even easier, because sometimes when you're playing live through an amp and it's back down a little too far and it's clean, it can be intimidating to play it like that. Okay. But it actually sounds better like that. So I could back off the volume on the amp, but what I'm playing through the guitar was still as if I was playing full on.
Okay.
And it gave that even nicer, like, tonal quality.
Sure.
So it was fun to play with it like that.
That's cool. That's very cool. So the album finally gets released, and obviously nobody sells albums now like they did in the 80s, right? Unless you're Taylor Swift. I think she's the only one that still sells albums, right? But you guys have one of the highest charting albums of your career when it comes. I think it's the second highest charting album behind Blow My Fuse in your career. Were you guys happy with the outcome and the feedback from the fans?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's weird because I forget, I don't even know what our total record sales were for that, but yeah, even in the old days you had to sell 1 million records or whatever, or gold 500,000,
right. Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first KIX record when that came out. I think we sold 60,000, which wasn't bad, but that was still a low number in those days, considered a low number. Mm-hmm. Now, if you did that, it would be like a hit record. Absolutely. And I think even 20,000 is considered like decent now.
Agreed. Yep. Agreed. So you guys were happy then with the feedback from the album, though, from the fans?
Yeah. I mean, it would have been cool to have like some huge breakthrough record.
Right.
Get a Grammy and all that junk. but yeah, I mean, yeah, we were surprised. Mm-hmm. I mean, it turned out way better than what we thought it was going to. Like, yeah. Going into it, there was a lot of anxiety and thinking like, oh man, because I've seen that happen so many times where a band would reunite with the old guys. They'd try to do a new record, and it just did. The spark was gone, and they put out this flop, and you listen to it, and you go, oh man, I used to love that band. What happened?
Right, absolutely.
And it was like that was our biggest fear. Mm-hmm. So to have the record come out as well as it did, we were just, it was like, it worked.
Right. So if you look back now to back in the 80s, you said before MTV was a big thing, right? You guys did a lot of videos. Do you look back and say, hey, that's my favorite video that KIX did, or, oh God, I can't watch that video, that is a train wreck for whatever reason?
Well, I always thought that Cold Blood was just a cool video.
Absolutely.
But all those during that era were cool. Then you look back at like Cool Kids and Body Talk. Yeah, those are a little goofy. And it's funny, you look at those and they weren't even filmed back then. I think they were using videotape. They look like like the old soap operas, the way they used to look these days. Has that look to it. But yeah, those were goofy, and the extras that they hired for those. You definitely tell it was the new wave days.
And that's the way all the early 80 videos were to me. So if you go back and you look at all the video, they were all cheesy, but there's something that's fun about them, right? It brings you back to 81, 82, 83, 84. They were cheesy, right? But that's fun to me, So, yeah. Yeah,
and they're part of history, so.
Absolutely. One or two last things. So to me, growing up, I always thought it was cool that you guys all had, I'll say, like nicknames. You, Ronnie, Jimmy. Your opinion, who had the best nickname?
Me.
Of course. How did that come about? Did that come about during the Midnight Dynamite sessions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we all had our own. Ronnie had the original. Ronnie was the original nickname guy. We named him before we even got out of the basement, like right at the front. Before we even we were still the Shoes back then.
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure you've heard where he got his name. It was it was a play on Rin Tin Tin. Right. So we call him Ron 1010.
Okay.
Because his guitar was on 10, his amp was on 10, and we started out in my parents' basement, which was this tiny little, like you couldn't even stand upright in this basement. It was like you're hunched over in this small little space, and Ronnie would be playing full blast. So anyway, that's where he got his name. And then, I got mine. Bo Hill named me. Well, he used to call me Brain.
Right.
Instead of Brian. And that was his pet name for me. But I would show up at the studio hungover because it was in New York City where we did at Atlantic Studios where we did Midnight Dynamite. So after every night we get done recording, we'd go out to some bar and just get hammered. And So the next day I'd show up for at the studio, and somebody would be out in the studio doing their parts, and Bo would be there behind the board, and there's a couch in front of the soundboard, in front of the window there for the studio, and I'd be there. I'd be stretched out on the couch, just laying there. And in between takes, Bo could hear me down there going, just moaning and groaning. So at one point, he walks around, and I kind of like open one eye, look at him, and he looks down at me, and he goes, "Brain damage." He goes, "That should be your nickname." So that's how that
happened. Very funny, very funny. Well, Brian, we spoke a lot about the last 30 years, 40 years of KIX. I appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything else you want to bring up, or anything? We don't know what's going to happen this year, but let's just say that the quarantine that we're in right now lifts. Is the plan for KIX to go back out on tour and continue doing what you guys have been doing?
Oh, of course.
Awesome.
I mean, we're just sort of waiting. We're just like like the miracle so far is none of our shows have been canceled. They've all been postponed,
right?
But they're still on the schedule, which is and it's starting to get compact. Like,
sure,
where it used to be spread out, now it's like you look at like September and October, and everything from like March, April, June has all been shoved over that way.
Right. Yep.
And we're just hoping that it does open back up. Otherwise, all that's going to get pushed even further, and then stuff might end up being canceled. Because I don't know if some of these venues might end up going under in the meantime.
Absolutely.
Which is a little scary to think about. But as far as playing, that's all. Personally, that's what I do. I wouldn't know what else to do. I mean, I am in Nashville. I could just go out and put a tip jar up on a stage somewhere.
Right. That's funny.
Like they do out here.
Right,
but yeah. And in the downtime, I don't know, maybe we'll end up working on some music. I don't want to commit to anything, but
that would be great.
But I'm down here in Nashville, so I would have to either make my way up that way, or I don't know. We would figure it out. But doing the internet thing, maybe throwing out a thing here. If Mark can figure that one out, maybe we'll do that to keep some fans happy. I've been doing like these cooking videos.
Yeah.
Which I just sort of did as a goof, and now it's like people are waiting on them, and I'm like, oh man, where did I start? How am I going to get out of this one?
Well, since you've cleaned up your lifestyle, I get the impression that you're into that type of stuff now, all the cooking and the healthy eating and all of that. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I've always loved to cook though.
Okay.
I've been cooking forever. I'm one of those people that, like even when I lived at home as a kid, if I got hungry and I would ask my mother for something to eat at lunchtime or something, she'd be like doing laundry. She'd go, she'd either put it off and I'd have to wait, or she'd go, oh, just go make it yourself. So, I got to the point where I didn't want to have to rely on her anymore. So I learned to cook. And the same goes with sewing. I know how to sew because of the same thing. I'd give her something to fix, and it would lay on her sewing machine for like months. So I finally go, it can't be that hard. So I'd learned how to do that, and that came in handy along the way, fixing clothes, making clothes even for myself. So yeah, the whole cooking thing, and then that came in handy when I got healthy, and besides being in physical health, the whole nutrition part came in, and I really dove deep into that. I've done so much research on the nutrition, and people look at my stuff sometimes and they're going, "Oh man," like they don't know where I'm coming from. But I've done my research, know that I'm on the right track.
Right.
And might look weird to some people. All I do is like I'm a carnivore now. I just eat meat.
Okay.
But it's a process I've gone through from going from a keto diet to a carnivore diet. It's an elimination thing. I've eliminated problems. Like I kept having problems, and I figure out, oh, just because I'm eating this. This is not working.
Right.
So I just keep eliminating stuff. I'm down to the core nutrition, and people think it's weird, but you got to look at it this way. I'm eating what like the cavemen used to eat.
Sure.
The cavemen and hunters, what they used to eat. That's what's natural. That's natural food. It's not something that came from the factory. That's not natural. Like eating a processed, seed oils or that's not right. That wasn't something to find out in the woods.
Right.
I'm eating is like human food. It's not weird, but people look at me like I'm weird, and I'm going to kill myself eating what's natural. Anyway,
Makes no sense. Right?
I could go on that rant.
No, well, so as you're talking, my mind is racing on a business idea, which obviously I have no pull to pull off, but I'm thinking of a book, Recipes of the Rock Stars, right? Because I'm hearing you talk. I've seen Sammy Hagar, who's big into cooking, right? I've seen Paul Stanley on the KISS cruises do cooking classes. Okay, literally on the boat, he's doing cooking classes. I think there's a market for a Recipe of the Rockstar book.
Probably. Jimmy went to culinary school during KIX's downtime.
Okay, there's another one.
He's an actual certified chef.
There you go.
I mean, Jimmy's really good. And then there's Jeff LeBar just reached out to me through Instagram.
That's right. He's working in a restaurant, I think now, right? As a chef?
Maybe, because he does post those gourmet-looking meals. So
I thought somebody told me he works in a restaurant now down in Nashville. I could be wrong. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure somebody told me he's working in a restaurant.
Yeah, he's a good cook too. So yeah, there's a lot of musician guys. Absolutely. Yeah, it would be weird, like a cookbook on my end, because I don't consider myself a chef or anything. It's more of like a overblown hobby for me. I mean, I love doing it. I'm good at it, but I don't know the science behind it. Maybe I'll get into that too in my downtime. Right. But and if you really look at my food, there's a lot of repeats. I repeat stuff, or I'll just turn them upside down, kind of like the recording process.
Right,
I'll just do it in a different way, so it looks like something different, but it's actually what I just ate like last week.
Well, I can relate because I'm a meat and potatoes guy. Don't throw vegetables. Don't give me fish. I'm meat and potato, so I can relate a little bit to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So if the fans want to support the band right now, I think you guys have had like a lockdown shirt that's available online also, right? So if that's
in the mask.
Yeah, in the mask, exactly. So if the fans want to support you guys while there is no shows to go to, I would encourage. I think they go to your KIX website and order it there.
Yeah. On the website, there's a merch link. You could find it there.
Excellent.
And it's called Right Rock is the merch company that we go through.
All right. So I definitely encourage the fans to go out, support you guys. Buy the masks. We need them anyway, right now. So buy a KIX mask. It'll be cool. And buy a T-shirt, right? Support the band that way. And awesome.
Yeah, and look me up on Instagram. You can look at my food. I still haven't figured out how to do the Instagram, like the videos and the links.
Okay.
Like I know how to put pictures on there, but I have my YouTube channel's got all my cooking videos. So if anyone wants to check out me.
Absolutely.
Like here's I'm sitting in my kitchen here, and the background is my
Very nice.
movie set. But
nice.
if anyone checks that out, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And the more subscribers I get, the easier it might be to get some income off of it too.
Absolutely. Well, I hope they do. I hope they go check that out, Brian. I hope they buy the shirts, the masks, check out your videos, and thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yes, and
it's always nice to be asked to do this stuff.
Awesome. No, thank you. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you out on the road much sooner rather than later.
Yeah, me too.
All righty. Thanks a lot, Brian. Take it easy.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty, there you have it. Once again, I'd like to thank Brian Forsythe for taking the time and chatting with me. I had a lot of fun, and I really appreciated his candor and openness about everything KIX. While you're here, hit that subscribe button below on my YouTube channel, and head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. That's it for this time. Till next episode, thanks for watching.